The loudest, the biggest, the brashest. New York is its own character in every play.
The bad thing about New York is the pressure. You're always under pressure.
Here are the stories about those plays. It's New York Accent with Damon Amendolara.
Welcome to New York Accent, everybody. Podcast and radio show and an audio and video project courtesy of Odyssey Sports, WFAN in New York, and 2400 Sports. Our next guest is the last manager to take the New York Mets to the World Series. And there's a lot of expectations on this year's team, but unfortunately, they have not reached them. Our next guest was the Sporting News Manager of the Year in 2015 after a long and storied career in Major League Baseball. Now he's an analyst that you see on SNY, amongst other places in New York. Joining us here on the show is Terry Collins. Terry, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. This year has been so difficult for the Mets because they've had a huge payroll, and obviously they still have been stuck below 500. There comes a point in time where you have to say, okay, it's just not going to happen this year. Have we reached that point in time before August 1st?
I don't think so. You know, especially the way the game is set up today with where you've got the extra wild card game or teams that are coming in. You know, you're looking at a streak of, 6 or 7 or 8 in a row, and all of a sudden you're 2 games out of the wild card. And I think so you've got to be, and I don't want to use the word patience because we've been patient all summer trying to watch them get it going. But, this time of year, this is where sometimes the good teams step up and really get it going. So, I think it's a long stretch to catch the Braves, but anything can happen as the Phillies showed you last year. All you want to do is get in.
Yeah, forget even the division. You're right. The expanded postseason gives you more chances at a wild card. Take us back through your years as a bench coach, as a manager with the Astros, manager with the Angels, manager with the Mets. Was there a year where coming toward the trade deadline, it did feel like you guys just couldn't get any traction, and then there was a pop and a run to October? Were you part of something that Mets fans can say, oh, okay, it's happened before, Terry was part of it?
Well, yeah, we can go back to 2016. I mean, I think in August, we were actually 2 games under 500 in August. And we got hot in August, and we made the playoffs due to some, a big streak we put together, some big games against the Phillies that we came back and won. And we end up getting in. We got beat by the Giants. But, the point is we got in because, we kept it together and we got some guys hot at the right time.
Last season, the Mets went 101 games and don't get out of the wild card round. They matched up against a really good Padres team as well. So the good news is there's many more slots to get into the postseason. The bad news is 101 wins doesn't guarantee anything. Right. Do you prefer the modern structure where the door is wider open, or do you prefer the old days where if you had 101 wins, you're going to the NLCS more than likely?
Well, that's a tough one because I can go tell you a number of years ago, the San Francisco Giants, I think they won 107 games and didn't get in the playoffs. So, I really like the fact that the extra wild card games allow the fans in many towns to still be excited about a chance to be in the postseason. And like I said, you look at the Phillies last year, they got to the World Series, and several teams have gotten to the World Series as wild card teams, and some of them have won. So, in all my years in the minor leagues, we used to play the halves where you played a 70-game first half. And then all of a sudden, after 70 games, you started from scratch. And it allowed teams in a lot of those towns who had terrible first halves to get excited about their team and yet still have a chance to be in the postseason. So I kind of like it. I think it's fun. It keeps the players excited. There's nothing worse than in the month of September going to the ballpark knowing you have no chance to get it, the games don't really mean anything to you except maybe you can eliminate somebody else. So I think it's always fun to know when you're going to the ballpark that those games mean something. And certainly if the Mets can get hot, I think this August and September, they will mean something.
Take us into a manager's mind in a season like this, because fans and media have been bewildered that Buck Showalter seemingly been so optimistic despite all of the losing, and people are wondering, when is he going to get more mad? Is he delusional? Is he out of touch? But you tell us, strategically, what do you think Buck is doing by being very optimistic despite a season that's obviously very disappointing?
Well, first of all, make no mistake, I'm sure Buck is as shocked and as disappointed as anybody. But you can't let that out. You have to be who you are. I was a little bit more vocal. I was a little bit more, passionate about some things. Not that Buck's not, but I kind of wore my emotions on my sleeve a little bit more than Buck does. Buck's in touch with everything. Make no mistake about it. He has a great feel for what's going on. I consider him one of the best managers in the game. And certainly, and I really believe it. He knows that, hey, look, a run at any time, a good run, they're going to be right back in it to where they've got a shot to get into the postseason.
So is the idea there not to apply more pressure than there already is by being negative, by being vocal about the struggles, and instead just trying to be placid, stay the course, waiting for the run to happen because you do have talent inside the clubhouse?
There's no question. That's the attitude you've got to have when you go in that ballpark every day. When you walk through those doors, those players know, they make no mistake, they have a great feel for what's happening. And when they see the manager change or they see the manager panic, they panic. And so Buck's one of those kind of guys. He keeps that even keel, and they know what to expect every day. He's one of the most prepared guys I've ever been around. So, and the players know that. And I think that helps. And I think that helps him get ready, knowing that he's not shook up by anything. And he can only control one thing, and that's, hey, the players in that clubhouse. And so he can't worry about who he doesn't have. He can't worry about trades. The only thing he can do is worry about those 26 guys that are in there right now.
It's hard for me when I hear people just crush Buck Showalter, because you look at the performance of guys that had great years last year or have a history and a resume of really great production, and they're just not doing it this year, whether it's Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, a lot of the starting pitchers, etc. So I'm wondering, when you're a manager and you're just looking at players that are not performing, how do you handle stars, great players, very good players that are just not producing? How can you connect to them and try to just stay supportive?
Well, there's that open line of communication that you've got to have throughout the season. There's a lot of, this game can humble you at any time. And a lot of the stars, and believe me, they hate to be embarrassed. Star players do not want to be embarrassed about anything. So the idea is to let them know, hey, it's happened before to other guys, other big name players, and to stay the course, stay the preparation. These guys, they've spent their entire careers with routines. Stay with the routine that works. The minute you try to change your stance or change your hands, that's when you fall into slumps. Stay with what's worked in the past, because eventually it's going to come back. But, there are times that, once in a while you got to tip your hat to the other team. They're big league players too on the other side of the field, and their job's to beat you. And once in a while you run into a team that's playing well or hot, no matter what their record is, and they're going to beat you. So what you have to do is just don't worry about what happened yesterday. We've got to worry about tonight, and because we don't know what's going to happen tonight that's going to affect us tomorrow. So tonight's the most important day of the season.
Can it be frustrating as a manager to have good players and they're just not performing well, and you're the one that gets blamed?
It comes with the job. That comes with the territory. It always has, and it always will. And you know what? Again, all I knew is all I wanted, and at the end of the night, to know that my players gave what they had on the field, and I was fine, win or lose, because you know what? Again, if everybody executes and things go right, hey, you can still get beat by who knows what, a bloop single in the ninth inning. But so you know what? All I cared for them is make sure they were prepared, and they gave it their best effort.
When you took over the job with the Mets in 2011, it was pretty obvious it was a tear down moment of the franchise. They had spent a lot of money through the 2000s, and then they realized, that the talent pool was drained. It didn't look like the money was going to be there for spending. They wanted to do a total rebuild. So when you take over a job like that later in your career, do you have to be assured that there's going to be patience? Because it can be risky taking over a job where it's going to be a 2, 3, 4, 5-year plan.
Well, when I got the job in New York, I was so excited to be back on the field at the major league level. When I left the Angels, when I resigned in Anaheim, I didn't know if I'd ever manage again. I actually went to Japan and managed for 2 years in Japan. And when I got my opportunity to come back to New York, I said, you know what, I'm going to enjoy it no matter how long I'm here. I'm going to enjoy the job. They're hard to get. There's only 30 of them in the world. And so enjoy it a little bit more. And so I approached it completely different than I had in the past. And I was told, hey, look, when you're going to be very good, by the time, you rebuild this team, you're going to get fired. And I said, well, if it happens, it happens. Well, it didn't happen. I stayed there long enough to take the team to the World Series and certainly enjoyed all of my time in New York. I go back and I can't tell you what a tremendous experience that was for, me and everybody that knows me and my family. It was a lot of fun. And I'm really glad that, I got my opportunity to do it and I lived, on the biggest stage in baseball.
This show is entitled New York Accent, and we talk to people that have played, coached, managed, starred in New York, sometimes grew up here, about what makes it different. Did you reach out to anybody that had managed or coached in New York to ask about the differences about doing it here?
Yeah, I reached out to a good friend who probably did it better than anybody, and that was Joe Torre. When I got the job in New York, I called Joe and said, okay, of course he was a New Yorker also, and I just said, tell me about, what it's like being here. And he gave me tremendous advice about, how to handle it, how to go about it. Was lucky to be around maybe probably the best PR or media relations person in all of sports, and that's Jay Horowitz, who helped me deal with the media and the sports writers and what to expect on a daily basis from those guys and talk about their personality. So when I got this job, I did all I could to make sure I reached out to all the resources that were available to me, and it all helped.
What was Torrey's advice? What did he say that really stuck with you of how to manage it?
He said, understand one thing, you know more than they do. Yeah, he said, no matter what you read, what you hear, what people are saying, you know more than they do. So he said, just don't ever forget that, and just be yourself, and run the game like you think it's supposed to be run.
So I guess that speaks to the volume of noise that's in New York, whether it's media, whether it's fan, it's all over the place. That if you start listening to all the criticism, it's different than other places. It can start maybe hitting you a little bit, and you have to keep reminding yourself, no, I can't doubt myself. I guess that's the message.
Right. I mean, again, I can't tell you how many nights, you'd make a decision. And before that decision is made, you're thinking about, I can do this or I can do this. And then you pick the one you think is going to be successful. And if it's not successful, you got to just ride it and wear it. That's part of it. Everybody's allowed to have an opinion. And after the fact, there's a lot of real smart people after something happened that didn't work to say, well, I would have done the other thing. Well, of course. I said it many times. Where were you when the decision was being made? We had all the documentation, all the numbers that said, hey, this is going to be the right decision. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I think everybody's allowed to have an opinion. That's what I think it's great about baseball. And one of the things I enjoyed about New York, they've got people follow the game. They know the game. They do have opinions. And after the 2015, when the Matt Harvey situation, I've had 2,000 people tell me, I'm glad you left him in. I got 2,000 people said you should have taken him out. So, but the point is, it's a passionate fan base, and that's what makes it so exciting.
So let's go back to Game 5, 2015 World Series. I was in the building that day, and 2-0 lead, ninth inning, Harvey's throwing darts. And I agreed with you. You ride him because the last thing you want is the bullpen to give up a hard-earned win. And Harvey was a guy that seemed to thrive on that moment. Obviously, it doesn't work out. Mets fans, we relive that over and over and over again. As a manager, it means even more. Do you relive that over and over again?
Well, it's hard not to, because I have so many passionate Mets fans that I still see today who still talk about it. So, I do relive it. But you know what? I thought it was the decision that was the right decision at the time. Matt deserved to go back out there. He was pitching brilliantly, wasn't tired. The place was electric. And so, hey, look, I thought it was the right move, and it didn't work out. But I look back now and I don't say, geez, I should have did this. Look, I made that move. I thought it was the right move, and it turned out not to be. But I wouldn't change it now.
One of the anecdotes around that is that you had originally thought you were going to bring in the closer, and so maybe Harvey had exhaled there, and then you changed your mind that he had convinced you that he wanted to go back out there. Is that how it transpired?
Yeah, that's how it did. But there were some things that led up to it. During the season that year, we had all those young pitchers, and we kind of had innings limits on a few of them, and so Matt was getting close to his innings limits when we tried to figure out how can we get these guys through the season, and he made a statement that he wasn't going to throw more than X amount of innings, so we had to put that into the mix. And then one night I pitched him against the Yankees at Citi Field, and he threw a great game, 5 innings. I think he only gave up 2 hits. And I took him out because we were worried about the innings total. So the next day he walked to my office and he said to me, "Give me the ball." He said, "I'm all done worrying about this other stuff. I want to pitch, and I want to pitch here." And you know what? He earned that. So on game 5, that was me saying, "You know what? You've earned this. You did what you're supposed to do as a professional. You took the baseball. This is your moment. Now go do it." And so I don't regret that, because it's also part of the things you have to do to get your players to believe in themselves and to believe in you as a manager, that you'll trust them. And I did that with Matt.
So if you went back and did it again, would the change just be not suggesting you're to go to the closer in the 9th and instead just saying, "Matt, you're ready? Okay, yes, you're out there"?
Well, yeah, because one of the things I love when players have passion themselves. And when Matt walked up to me and he said, "I'm fine. This is my game. I want to finish." You know what? That spoke a lot. That spoke volumes to me. And I said, "Okay, go get him." And so I sent him back out.
I can't blame you on that. And I know you've spoken publicly about the Johan no-hitter, and that was a lot of pitches, but it was the Mets' first ever no-hitter. It's his signature moment of his career. Is that also something that you relive and rethink?
Yes, that one was tough for me for a long time. It never changed, because we can look back after that no hitter, and Johan didn't pitch much more after that. So, and I knew in that game when we were talking about a guy who was coming off an injury. He was a huge part of the club, how much he meant to the organization. When all of a sudden those pitches started mounting up, I knew it. But you know what? He is such a professional. He's such a leader in the clubhouse. He deserved that opportunity. So as I sat there on that bench, either I wanted him to get fast outs or somebody to get a hit. That's where it was, but I couldn't take him out of that game. He deserved that moment because of his career and what he had done. So I let it ride. And yeah, years later, some time later, it was tough because he didn't pitch much after that. And, how much did that affect our organization, that decision I made? But 2 things happened along the way. One, from a man who said to me that he had taken his father to a game, to that game, and his father was a huge Mets fan. And a year later, his father passed away, and he told his son, he said his biggest moment in his life was to get to see Johan Santana pitch the no-hitter. Wow. So that made me feel better. And then at the anniversary of the no-hitter, Johan came to me and he said, "Stop it. I was fine. You were not going to take me out of that game." And that made me feel better. So I've pretty much now said, okay, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad it was for him. And I'm not going to change that the way I feel now.
Wow. That's pretty special. That's enough. When you hear stories like that it was that person's the greatest moment of his life, it really must make you feel validated in that you had a career that changed people's lives for the better. When you're in sports and you do something great, it really does leave an indelible mark in people's lives. That must feel really good.
Well, and again, that just tells you what the fan base in New York is like, whether you're a Yankee fan or a Mets fan. I live in Florida, and I live in Port St. Lucie where we train, and I play a lot of golf, and I play a lot. And when someone will introduce me to a guy and he goes, "Oh my gosh," he said, "I'm a Yankee fan, but," he said, "I really am glad to meet you." And that's the way it is. They have a passion for their team, and they love it. And yeah, so when you can have a guy say, "Hey, look, you made a difference in my father's life, and thank you for leaving him in the game." Yeah, that meant a lot.
The managers that have taken the Mets to the World Series are all icons. Gil Hodges, Yogi Berra, Davey Johnson, Bobby Valentine, beloved figures in franchise history. and Terry Collins. I mean, this is a pretty select group. Do you feel the love, or do you think that, I don't know, it might be hard to put yourself in categories of all-time greats, but do you feel the love of being in that select group?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I go back to New York a lot. Matter of fact, I'll be there next week for a few days doing some SNY things. And I walk down the street and I have people stop me every day in New York and talk about the 2015 season, or the argument that got on the internet with me arguing with an umpire, and it feels nice to think people, think that much of you, to actually stop and thank you for, the 2015 season, or, hey, look, boy, I loved your passion with the umpire, because it's amazing. I mean, in a city that big, how I can still walk down and people still stop me today, 7 years after I managed that team. So it's pretty cool.
So in other words, when you fly into JFK or LaGuardia and you're walking through the terminal, people yell, "My ass is in the jackpot, Terry."
And the biggest one is, "You got to give us a shot. You got to give us a shot."
Terry Collins led the Mets from 2011 through 2017, end of the 2015 World Series, where he was named Sporting News Manager of the Year, led them back to the postseason in 2016 as well. And you get to see him in SNY, as he mentioned, here in the New York area. Terry, pleasure to catch up, man. Thank you so much. We'll look for you on TV coming up.
All right. Thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy New York Accent, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more episodes like this one. Also, if you want to watch more episodes of New York Accent, check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you for the next episode of New York Accent.